just to bring back some of the things to see what you remember from when you first were when you first enlisted into the service. Where were you living at the time you enlisted into the service?
In Hartford.
Okay, and why did you decide to join?
I was, my draft status had been it was eminent, and I wanted to choose the service I was in, so I got into the Air Corps Cadet Program, the Army Air Corps Cadet Program.
Okay, now what made you choose the Air Corps Cadet Program?
I wasn't enamored of slogging around as a GI.
Okay.
As an infantry man.
Okay. Now, do you recall your first days of service?
Not really, except that I was inducted at Fort Devens, Massachusetts. And of course that was a series of shots and examinations. And they just wanted to make sure that you were warm so that you could serve.
Oh, really? Okay, so what did it feel like? Were you nervous, excited?
Well, obviously, it's a new experience for a young man, and obviously I think that most of us were somewhat nervous, not knowing what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. So, tell me about your boot camp experience and your training experience. What was that like?
Of course, the first indoctrination in the service is basic training, and I served in Greensboro, North Carolina, and of course that was out in the boonies, out in the woods, and it was a nice setup. They fed us well, but they really concentrated on physical training.
Oh, okay, what year was that?
That was in 1943.
Okay. Do you remember any of your instructors?
Not really, no. We had PT, physical training sergeants, PT.
Okay. So, how did you get a chance to form a relationship with any of them, or?
No, of course they were in separate quarters from the enlisted personnel.
Okay. And how did you get through it? Was it easy for you? The training? Did you have a tough time getting through it?
Well, there wasn't any great problem. Obviously, you know, as I said, it was a proposition of becoming physically fit, and obviously you had to push yourself in order to do that, but that wasn't too difficult.
Okay. So, where exactly did you go throughout the time you were in the war? What other places?
From Greensboro, North Carolina training, I was assigned to the 59th College Training Detachment at Raleigh, North Carolina. And that was a school situation where they were trying to enrich our minds.
Mm-hmm.
And supposedly make us fit as officers and gentlemen.
Okay.
Of course, this was flight training. It was navigators, bombardiers, and pilots. And of course, most of us aspired to be pilots, but we weren't all fortunate enough to do that.
Yeah.
I was assigned to a bombardier group.
Okay, now, out of all the places that you went throughout your service, was there anyone that you liked more, or that you?
Oh, I think I enjoyed the North Carolina State College experience.
Okay. Okay. So
It was regimented, but it still, we had a group of good buddies, and we all had fun together.
okay. So do you remember arriving in North Carolina? What was that like?
Well, I was impressed by the amount of smoke from the locomotives on the way from Connecticut to North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I don't really remember the transfer from Greensboro to North Carolina State, nor from North Carolina State to Keesler Field in Montgomery, Alabama.
Okay.
That was where we were to get our flight training. And again, of course, the emphasis was on physical training. It's a daily routine.
Mm-hmm. And what was that routine? What?
Exercise.
So, how would it start? How long would that run, and what kinds of things would that do?
Oh, it was
Run?
probably 2 hours a day. And it was the jumping jacks and the physical exercise, push-ups
Mm-hmm.
to strengthen the body.
Okay. So what was your job assignment, or your job?
Well, at Keesler Field, of course, the training was for the bombardier school,
Mm-hmm.
sitting up in the nose of a bomber. But there was no particular assignment as such, except that we had to pay attention to our studies.
Okay. So did you see any combat?
No, I did not.
Okay. So were there any casualties in your unit?
I had understood that we lost some of my squadron in air crashes and further training.
Oh, wow.
I don't remember any specific buddies that lost their lives, but I know that there were some.
So do you have any anything that you remember, or any experience that was just fascinating to you that stood out from everything else?
I don't recall anything specifically
Mm-hmm.
that impressed me, except after having been washed out at Maxwell Field, washed out of the cadet training program, I was transferred to Wisconsin,
Okay.
Truax Field in Madison, Wisconsin. And Madison, Wisconsin was the land of milk and honey.
Mm-hmm.
And we could always have all kinds of liquid refreshments from the bovine population there. And of course, I enjoyed being able to use the facilities of Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin at Madison.
Okay.
It was really a nice situation that we had there. And of course, that was a radio training school at Truax Field. And from Truax, I was transferred to Scott Field, Illinois. And eventually, I became an instructor on instrument landing equipment maintenance. And that was when I was promoted to staff sergeant.
Oh, okay.
And I was fortunate enough to become permanent party and was able to bring my wife to live with me in Belleville, Illinois. We had a shared house in Belleville,
Mm-hmm.
and it was quite family-oriented. Our landlady, Mama Schick, was strict. character, but she was very pleasant.
Okay.
And I was able to secure accommodations for a buddy of mine who went home to get married, and he brought his wife out, and we lived together there in Belleville and enjoyed the entertainment in the Belleville town, and were able to get into St. Louis occasionally.
Oh.
And, I had a buddy in the service who lived in St. Louis, and he invited us, my wife and I, to celebrate Christmas there in St. Louis. St. Louis is a really great town. I do regret not having taken more advantage of traveling around to see the sights. But basically, I enjoyed my stay at Scott Field. And of course, the war ended when I was stationed at Scott Field, and I was transferred to Camp Beale, California, separation center. And eventually, my turn came to be separated, and I was living. My wife was able to drive out to California. A scary trip going over the mountains, but she made it all right.
Yeah.
And so we lived in Marysville, California for several months. And eventually, as I say, I was discharged there and elected to be discharged in California so that we could drive home across the country. And it took us 7 months to get home.
Wow.
And there I was able to take advantage of the terrain and see things like the Grand Canyon and the Painted Forest and the
Okay, so were you awarded any medals or citations?
Well, never having been in a combat situation, the only medals that I could that I was eligible for was the Good Conduct Medal and the War Service Medal.
Okay.
I think there was one other medal that I was awarded, but of course that's part of the spaghetti that you wear
Yeah.
on parade.
And now I know you mentioned that your wife drove down to California, but how did you keep in touch with your family? Through letters? Did you speak to them?
It was mostly through correspondence, and my wife was a good letter writer, so my family wasn't as unhappy with me because they still heard about me through my wife.
Oh, yeah.
My father was very delighted that I washed out. He was afraid that I might get into the Air Corps or Air Service and be lost that way.
Oh, wow.
But I was fortunate in having a very understanding family, and they helped make life a lot more pleasant for my wife and myself
Yes.
while I was in the service.
So, while you were in the service, what was the food like?
By and large, not too bad.
Okay.
And of course, as I said, in
Wisconsin.
Madison, Wisconsin, there was all kinds of food available. And of course, at Scott Field, we ate at home, so I wasn't in any mess halls there.
Yeah.
But at Keesler Field, of course, we were training to be gentlemen, and we were served meal in the mess halls. And it was a restaurant kind of operation.
Okay. So did you feel that you had all the supplies you needed? Or did you ever, was there a time when you felt that you didn't have enough?
Well, of course, the service took care of all of your problems. And obviously, the post exchange was available for any extra things you needed.
Okay.
And of course, most of us bought all our cigarettes at the post exchange, which was a lot less costly because there wasn't any taxes imposed on tobacco at the PX.
So was there ever a time when you felt pressured or stressed in a situation?
Well, some of the training at Keesler Field, or flight training, was stressful. But of course, the college training detachment flying was a very happy situation.
Mm-hmm.
Great to get up, fly in the sky, and get the nose of the ship up and intentionally get into a tailspin. And that was exhilarating.
So, did you have anything special that you did for good luck?
I'm not particularly superstitious, so
Oh, okay.
there was no icons or anything that I needed.
Okay, I noticed that in the book that you showed me, there were like some bands and people playing volleyball. What kinds of things did y'all do for entertainment purposes?
Well, I think most of us were involved in going to the PX movies.
Okay.
But obviously there were games such as volleyball. I don't remember any other group sports that we got into.
Mm-hmm. So, I know you said that you and your wife traveled for a few months when you left the service. Was there anything else that you remember doing when you left, like before you traveled, or did you automatically just hit the road and start sightseeing?
Well, I had an uncle in New Mexico, and we visited him for a little while.
Okay.
And that was a happy situation.
So do you recall the day that the service ended? Is that what you remember most, leaving from California? Or was there a feeling that you had before you got ready to go?
I don't quite understand the question.
Okay, so I know you mentioned that you and your wife left from California. Was there any feeling that you felt like, were you happy to be going home? Was there a little feeling that you were going to miss some of the people you met along the way? How did you feel before you left?
Well, obviously it was very interesting to go back and travel. And of course, we were impressed by the number of oil derricks in Texas. And of course, that was one of the sights that we saw on the way But we enjoyed our trip all
Okay. So did you keep a personal diary or journal?
no.
Okay. So when you left the service, did you go back to school? Did you work? What did you do?
I went back to my job, yes.
Okay, and where were you working at?
It was in a job shop, mechanical job shop.
And that was in Hartford, Connecticut?
That was in Hartford, yes.
Okay. So did you eventually go back to school? And if so, was your education supported by the GI Bill?
Well, I used my GI Bill benefits to buy a house,
Okay.
and I had to wait until I was over 60 to enroll at Central. And I obtained my bachelor's degree at Central.
Okay.
And of course, because of more than 62 years, I didn't have to pay any tuition.
Okay.
And my primary costs were transportation, books, and other supplies that you needed.
Okay. So, did you make any close friendships while you were in the service, or keep in contact with anybody when you left?
Oh, I had one buddy that we were real close with, and he and his wife set up housekeeping in New Jersey, and we used to travel back and forth, and that was a very happy situation.
Okay. So, did you join any veterans organizations?
Oh yes, I'm a member of the American Legion.
Okay. Now, how did the military experience affect you when you got back home?
Well, of course, I lost 3 years of civilian life
Yes.
to 3 years of military life, and I basically enjoyed my military service, although I wouldn't want to do it again. I think that I was one of the guys that helped to support the rest of the guys in the field.
Okay. Now, did your experience affect how you feel about the military or war itself?
Well, unfortunately, I feel that it's necessary to have armed forces,
Yes.
and I don't see any way to avoid military service. And I almost think that compulsory military service is a good thought. Obviously, we'd all be better physically if we were subjected to the military regimen.
Yes. Is there anything that you would like to share that we did not cover in this interview? Or any?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Okay.
Obviously, those who did not enter the service benefited financially a lot more than we in the service did. I was fortunate enough in having a family that helped to support my military service, so I have no complaints whatever,
Okay.
except that I lost 3 years of civilian life.
Yes.
But at least I didn't lose my life.
Yes. Okay. So, I would like to thank you for sharing your story and your experience with me and with everybody else who will see this video, this interview.
Well, I hope it's of some interest to people, historians. Of course, I'm a would-be historian, so I'm willing to participate in this kind of oral history.
Yes. And it will be
I don't know how important my story is, but obviously there had to be some people to back up the fighting men.
But still, it's an important story. Okay. So, again, thank you for sharing your story.
You're very welcome.